What is up, folks? I'm Nate, and welcome to SWBCrawler. I got some interesting news today. Well, not news. I got an interesting product today that I'm going to open up the box, maybe get the thing plugged in, and lay down a weld or two. That's right. YesWelder, being the awesome partner that they are, got me a new welder. So stay tuned. I'm going to get this thing out of the box. We're going to go from zero to hopefully welding within the span of a few minutes, and then we'll see how this thing compares to my good old Clark that I've been using for so long. This video is sponsored by YesWelder. If you're in the market for quality welding equipment that won't break the bank, check out YesWelder.com and use the code SWBFAB for an additional 10% off. You can't see me now, but that's okay. You can see the box. The box is what's important. So, as you guys know, I'm just going to work on opening up this box while I talk. As you guys know, I am planning on getting started on the wife's bumper build on the 2014 JKU with winch plate, hopefully like January, February. So I wanted a new welder before I started that process, because my video where I went over wire speed and power settings on the Clark told me one thing. 1/4-inch steel might be tough to get welded with that welder. I was using 3/16 steel in that demo, and I didn't quite get the penetration that I wanted. So I started thinking about getting me a new welder. So I reached out to YesWelder and I asked them if they wanted to work with me so that their welder would be featured in that project. And lo and behold, they wanted to work with me. So what I said about YesWelder being an awesome partner was no exaggeration. They are great. The equipment that I have of theirs thus far, like the Cut 55DS and the welding helmets, the auto darkening welding helmets that I have of theirs, have been great. I've been hearing good things from other folks in the industry about YesWelder. So here we are. All right. Here it is. The YesWelder MIG-205DS 110 or 220 multi-process welder. Now, I'm gonna get the instruction booklet out, and we're gonna go through some of it so I can figure out what's what here. But according to their information on their website, this thing will do gas or no gas MIG, I think TIG, and maybe even stick, but I'm going to check on that. All right, so here is what came in my box. We got a clamp here for stick welding. We got a ground clamp. We have one of these wire brushes that seem to be obligatory with any welder when you buy them anymore. Little wire brush, chipping hammer. I've got a better one in the stock already. Line to connect to your gas cylinder. An adapter to go from 220 to 110. The machine has a 110 plug on it, so you need this adapter to plug it in to your 220 line, which again, like I said, I'm not wired for yet. There's no MIG gun, and I don't know if that was intentional or not. I'm going to have to check with YesWelder. I thought the MIG gun was supposed to be included, and I don't have one. So I'm going to have to check with them. But here is what came out of the box. Now, there are dial settings here for TIG, MIG, gas and gasless, and stick. This is your power dial. The whole machine looks pretty nice and pretty well built. Here's where you're wired. Oh, look at that! Dummy, you gotta look everywhere, don't you? Look, there's the MIG gun. Sorry, folks, I should have looked in there before I thought the MIG gun wasn't here. The MIG gun is included. Look at that. The trigger on this feels so much. So I just did a video about the Cut 55DS, and my only real complaint about that plasma cutter is the trigger is just so sensitive. It takes almost no pressure to trigger it. You could be repositioning and it hits. This feels nice. It's a nice spring-loaded trigger. It feels comfortable in my hand. I like that. So there's the MIG gun. Decent length cable, or decent length lead here for the MIG gun, which is awesome. That might be 10 feet. That's cool. My old one has like a 6-foot cord on it, and that's not enough. My Clark, that is. This machine, I don't know if you can get an idea for how physically large it is, but it's a little bit smaller than my Clark, the Clark 180EN that I've been using, which is nice. It's not on wheels. The Clark was on wheels, but that's fine. One of the projects I intend to do is to build a welding cart for these things. So, there it is, all the stuff that came in the box. I'm going to see if I can get this thing wired up and lay down a bead or two to let you guys see how that looks. All right, so with everything out of the box, we can now hook things up. So, first things first, we need to get the ground set up the way it needs to be set up, and we need to get the gun connected to the machine. So, the easy part here is going to be the ground. So, anyone who's ever worked with gas or gasless machines knows that in order to weld gasless, you set up the polarity one way, and in order to weld with gas, you set the polarity the other way. Now, the way to do that on this machine is you have this jumper. On the machine, it's labeled plus minus. You move this here or there, depending on whether you're wiring with or without gas. Now, I'm setting this up for gasless MIG, so the instructions say, using gasless function, connect the plus minus into minus socket, and the ground clamp into the plus socket. Okay, so this goes to minus. You can see they're labeled down here. And it's like a twist lock style thing here. The ground clamp into the other one. Now this feels a bit crisscrossed here, right? Because now you've got this in the way, but I don't think that's going to be a problem when you start using the machine, right? So that'll be there, big deal. Now, the nice thing about having this stuff disconnectable is that when you're not welding, you can pull all this stuff off of here. Now, once you get wire fed through this gun, it's going to be less likely you're going to want to pull this off of here because you'll be wasting wire every time you do so. And that's probably not the best way to go about it. I'm probably going to end up leaving this gun on there, which is another reason I really want to get a cart. Because with a cart, I won't have to worry about getting all this stuff out of the way. With the old one, I would just coil it up. With the Clark, that is, I would just coil things up and wheel it out of the way. But that's not going to be so easy with this one because there ain't no wheels, so it needs a cart. This should be pretty straightforward. All right, you got this big clamp or big socket on here. Let me try to set this up so you can see it. Has a nice protector on here that unscrews. And there we've got, that's your gas wire, and this is for the electric current, I believe. Yeah, it must be. This thing also has a cap on it. You can see gas, the two for the electrodes, and the wire feed. So theoretically, this just kind of plugs in here the only way it fits. It should only go one way. All right, and then you screw this on here. And that's it. So aside from getting the wire now fed into the machine, which I'm basically going to scavenge my spool of wire from my my Clark, aside from getting the wire fed in, you're ready to weld at this point. So what I'm going to do next is try to get the wire out of the Clark and into this thing. All right, so number one is we need to make sure that the tip of this gun is going to work with the wire that I've taken out of my Clark. This is the wire I have in the Clark. It's from a company called YesWelder. I really don't love the wire, but I bought this big 10-pound spool of it, so I'm going to use it till it's gone. I've heard that YesWelder actually has pretty good wire, so, you know, maybe I'll buy some YesWelder wire to go with my YesWelder welder when it comes to it. So what I've done is I pulled this out. Let me trim this end off. It's a little dirty. What I've done is I pulled the wire out. I took the tip. I did check the tip that came with the YesWelder, and it does not doesn't work with the 035 wire I've got here. This is an 035 tip. You can see it slides through perfectly fine. If you don't know what the tip is, this is the gun, the torch that I have taken apart here. What this does is this screws into the end of the gun here. This is a shield for gas, right? So when you're welding, the wire comes out of the tip here. That's what makes your arc, and of course, the weld. This is primarily here to guide the gas that comes out of these little holes, because when you're welding with gas, it comes through here, comes out these little holes, and then of course is directed out the tip of the gun to where you're welding, shielding gas. Perfect. I am welding gasless, so theoretically I don't even need that on there. I keep it on to keep all this stuff good and clean. This tip is changed based on the size of wire you've got. This wire is 035, this tip is 035, so it fits right through it. Ta-da. The one that came with it must be for 030 or something smaller, because this wire would not fit through that tip. So I just took that tip and I stuck it on the Clark for now. I scavenged this one from the Clark. So I'm going to put that on here. Next is to get the wire in. So the way this works is the spool goes on this spindle here. This is spring-loaded, so it puts pressure on the spindle to keep it centered. This is where the wire gets fed off the spool into here, right? This is kind of spring-loaded, so it moves around a bit, but it straightens it out before it goes in here. There's a wheel in here that is powered, right? As that wheel spins, it draws wire off the spool and through this long conduit, whatever you want to call it, into the torch. So this allows you to put pressure onto the wire as it goes onto the wheel. What you need to do to get it loaded is you loosen it way up, pull it off. This pops up and out of the way, and that exposes the wheel here, right? Now, what you do is, so this you can see is captured on here. If you don't do that, it's going to just spring off because it's, you know, steel wire essentially. There, look at that. It broke and then it spun off. So I'm going to hold this while I get this guy on here kind of one-handed. Like that. This goes in here to keep it centered. It's one way. Then the spring. And then this guy, which is just a little threaded jobby. I might have it backwards. I think I have it backwards. Yeah? No, this is the right way. That thread's on there. Now this doesn't have to be super tight, because the spring is what keeps the tension on there. Now you want to get this to a point where it's not kinked. Cut it off. Feed it through this little spring jobby here. And it'll come out the other side. You probably can't see it on the camera. But it lays, there's a groove in the pulley, the wheel that's in there. You want to lay it in the groove. In fact, if I let go, this is going to pop out. I'll show you the wheel then a little better. You sort of feed it in there till it's to the point where it's not going to pop off. YesWelder provided an additional wheel. You see how it's grooved? There's little teeth in these grooves, right? And they sort of grab onto the wire and pull it off the spool and through the gun. Okay, so now that it's in there, you pop this guy back down, fold this back up. We'll work on tension on this, but the idea will be that once we have the welder plugged in and turned on, when you pull the trigger, this will pull wire and feed it through the gun. What we can do now is power this thing up and feed the wire through. Alright folks, maybe you can't tell from the noise, but I have the machine on now. what I should be able to do now is pull this trigger and we'll see wire get pulled in. There it goes. The wire speed is still pretty low at the moment. Let's crank that up a bit. How do we do that? So conveniently there's a button on the front of the machine that will feed wire. That's pretty cool. What we should see is wire coming out the end of this soon enough. And there it is, wire. Now when I pull this trigger, it feeds wire at the speed it thinks it should come out at. This thing appears to be, well, I gotta learn more about how the machine works in order to tell you why, but it seems to be pre-programming the wire speed based on the amps I have the dial set to. Yeah, if I set it lower, the wire goes slower. If I set it higher, the wire goes faster. Okay. If I can figure out how, I think we can weld with this thing now. Alright folks, so here's our test piece. You may remember this as the insert that I made for this very welding table when I fabricated it. It didn't turn out great because when I bent the steel to then re-weld it, there's a big gap. So I never really finished welding it like I was going to. So right now it's going to be sort of a test piece. I believe it's 1/8 inch steel with the welder only operating at 110. I didn't want to go with anything too thick, so I'm going to try to see if I can weld this with any sort of decent penetration. I'm going to basically just take one of these seams that I haven't finished and lay a little bead on it and see how it looks. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to set the YesWelder up to 1/8 inch steel. It appears to be metric, so I don't know if I can do this or not, but we'll see. And then we're going to try to lay a bead. Alright folks, so there's a button on the front of the welder. Looks like 2 arrows that sort of circle around each other, and it lets you select whether you want to set voltage directly, or I guess amps directly, or thickness directly. I figured out that 1/8 inch steel, which is what this is about 3 millimeters, 3.1 and some change millimeters. So I toggled that and I set it to 3.1 because it is in millimeters. And now I'm going to attempt to lay a bead. So we'll see how this goes. Alright, here we go. First weld with the YesWelder MIG-205DS. Alright folks, I'm going to turn off the machine, maybe air this shop out a little bit, and then I'm going to show you how the welds look. Alright folks, so I'm going to do my best here, handheld on the camera, and show you what I did. Alright, so you saw me make a couple welds there. This here is one of my old welds with the Clark. This here is one of the welds I just did. Now you can see starts out really nice, and then there's like some gaps and porosity in it. I think that's because I was moving too fast. What kept happening to me, and you can see it right here, this I think is the very first weld I did. What happened to me is I started out welding, and then I burned through. Now that could be because of how this material is set up, right? There's a gap here. I don't know. I need more practice with this welder before I can really say. This here is one of the new welds today. This here is one of the new welds today. These, look how nice and smooth these look compared to how kind of globby the Clark looked. Now, that could have been me, just like this is me, right? The burn through is me. The point is that the YesWelder has a completely different feel to it than I'm used to from the Clark. The Clark, I mean, it's going to be a matter of experience, I think. But the YesWelder, I immediately got that sizzle that you should be getting when you weld. And the Clark, it was always kind of a battle to get that. So there you can see the welds pretty well. All right, and then this weld here, right here, is the last weld that I did with the YesWelder today. Now you can see, again, it looks nice and smooth. This is the weld I just did. This is an older weld that's still on there. It's still kind of hot, so I can't touch. But look how nice that came out. This did not have a gap. You can see here is where I folded the steel. I cut and folded it. So that's that. That's a brand new weld today on top of steel that didn't have a gap in it. So in all, I like it. I like how these turned out. They look nicer than my Clark's welds did. Again, that could have been me. The YesWelder takes some of the guesswork out of figuring out material thickness, which I like. So we're going to give it some more practice, not in this video, of course, but over time, and hopefully see where that goes. So there you have it, folks. The YesWelder MIG-205DS multi-process welder. So far, I'm very happy with this thing. Like I said, I got to get some time behind the trigger of this thing to really get a feel for it and really get some good quality welds laid down. But so far, I'm liking what I'm seeing. I like how easy it is to set up the thickness and the wire speed and the amps on this thing, because you basically dial in the thickness and it does the guesswork. It takes some of the guesswork out of there for you. I do feel like I'm going to have to get used to the settings that it gives me. Maybe given the type of joint I was trying to weld there, I should have turned the thickness down a bit, because it really isn't as thick as I was telling the machine that it was, because it was cut and there was a gap and all that. But at any rate, I'm looking forward to getting some more time behind the torch of this thing. If you like this machine, if you've got any experience with it, or if you'd like to go buy one yourself, feel free. Head on over to YesWelder.com, use the code SWBFab to get 10% off. I'm going to definitely get as much time as I can with this thing, and then I'll give you a longer-term review and how I like this machine once I start actually doing some projects with it and not just test welding a few things in my shop. So, thanks for watching today. I hope you guys have found this informative. I hope you guys check out YesWelder. Like I said, I've been pleased with the relationship that I've got with them, and I've been pleased with the products that I've gotten from them, whether they were purchased or whether they were given to me. As you guys know, I try to give unbiased reviews. A buddy of mine, Bearded Jeeper, he's got this same welder and he loved it. That's the whole reason I decided I was going to go give this a shot. I was ready to buy this welder before I contacted YesWelder. I just had to save up the money to do so. It runs around $300-400 on their website, if I remember correctly. So, not a bad price for what seems to be a pretty quality machine. Time will tell. So, thanks for watching today. Remember, you can support the channel via Patreon or by heading over to SWBCrawler.com and buying some merchandise, hats, t-shirts, neck gaiters, whatever. And remember, folks, get out there and wheel. I'll catch you in the next one.
Mm-hmm.